Tonight, the talk is on compassion. Now, if we look into the dictionary, compassion, the word compassion means being moved by the suffering of others and wanting to help alleviate or reduce the suffering. So, in other words, there is suffering, and then we want to help other beings. Now, this word is quite closely associated with another word. Now, this word, compassion, in Pali is karuna, and it is quite closely associated with metta. Metta, or loving kindness, means kindness in our actions, speech, and thought to others. In other words, we want to make others happy. So in the absence of suffering, we want to give happiness to other beings. So it's slightly different. Compassion is there is suffering and we want to help. And in loving kindness, when there is even no suffering, we want to give happiness. It's more positive, loving kindness. Now, Buddhists are well known for being compassionate, for being harmless, not harming any beings, right? But unfortunately, it is not so well practiced. And we find that Christian love is quite well known, because a lot of Westerners, they go out of their way to help other beings, even animals, right? But actually, when we compare Christian teaching and our Buddhist teaching, our Buddha stressed on compassion and loving kindness even much more than Jesus. In the Bible, Jesus said, if somebody slaps you on the right cheek, you turn the other cheek for him to slap. That's pretty difficult to do, and most Christians won't do it. But in the suttas, in the Kakachupama Sutta, the standard the Buddha gave is even higher. The Buddha said, if you are caught by bandits and they saw away your arms with the two handles, long saw, they sawed away your arms and your legs. And if on that occasion you got angry, then you are not practicing the Buddha's teachings. That's even more difficult, isn't it? So, in other words, the Buddha is trying to tell us that we should have loving kindness towards all beings, no matter what. And this we can only practice if we understand the law of karma vipaka, that whatever we get is what we deserve, nothing more, nothing less. So we understand the law of karma vipaka. Whatever comes to us, good or bad, we accept it, especially bad, because it's very difficult to accept suffering. But we should bear in mind that if we don't accept the suffering that comes to us now, it will come to us later. So that is accepting karma. Now we must differentiate Buddhist compassion from the compassion practiced by other teachings, external sect teachings. Because our Buddhist compassion is always with wisdom. It always comes with wisdom. If you want to practice compassion, you have to practice it with wisdom. Wisdom is a very important factor. Otherwise, you are not practicing really beneficial compassion. So the Buddha mentioned in the suttas how external sect ascetics practice the various external sect practices, and among them he mentioned the compassion practices of the external sect ascetics. For example, the Buddha said, if an external sect ascetic goes on Pinabat, arms round, and he's about to accept food from somebody, and then he sees a lot of flies around. And then he thinks to himself, but this is not mentioned, he probably thinks to himself that if he accepts the food, then the flies will not have enough food to eat. So he refuses to accept the food upon seeing the flies, and he walks away. And then on another occasion, when he's about to accept the food, he sees dogs around. Also, he refuses to accept the food and walks away, probably for the same reason that he thinks by accepting this food, the dogs will not have enough food to eat. And then another time, if he's about to accept food from a woman who is suckling her baby, and then he sees that and he refuses to accept, probably thinking that the baby may not have enough milk to eat. So this is practicing compassion without wisdom. And then maybe surprising to some people, the Buddha also mentioned among the practices of external ascetics, vegetarianism, that they refuse to accept meat and fish. So this may be a bit hard for some people to understand, but I will try to explain later. But we can see that external ascetics, sometimes they practice vegetarianism overboard, sort of over the hill, like these Jains or Nigantas. Many years ago, when I was a young university student, I had a friend who later married, and then the father-in-law was a doctor from Burma. But in his young days, he practiced in India, and he said that he was called to a house one day to see an old lady. And when he went into the house, it was apparent to him that this was a rich family. And when he examined this old lady, he found that she was suffering from malnutrition. So he asked the son, what food does your mother eat? And then the son said, we are vegetarians. Then he thought to himself, vegetarians don't have to be suffering from malnutrition. So he asked his son, what exactly does your mother eat? Then the son said, we take vegetables. Then he asked the son, what type of vegetables? Then the son went to the back and brought some vegetables to show him. Actually, stale vegetables, no more green. Because to them, to some people in India, plants, including vegetables, have life. So when they are green, they have life. So they thought that it's not compassionate to take life. So green vegetables and fresh fruits we cannot eat. So they go to that stage where they suffer from malnutrition. So that is the Jains. So what is Buddhist compassion? In our Buddha's teachings, the Buddha stressed that all his followers should keep the precepts. And the lay people, initially the Buddha taught that lay people should keep 7 precepts. Later it was modified to 5. And these 7 precepts are 3 precepts concerning the body and 4 concerning speech. And the aim of these precepts is not to harm other living beings. So like the 7 precepts, the first precept is not to kill, not to intentionally kill any living being, because life is the most precious thing to any living being. You can understand if somebody wanted to buy your life, say for $100 million, would you be willing to sell your life, or even $1 billion? You won't, right? So if you take somebody's life, that person will not forgive you, especially human beings. Human beings know how to think. So if you are murdered, probably you think if I become a ghost, I'll come and haunt him. So as far as other beings concerned, they might not have this thought to take revenge, but still they have a lot of hatred for you. So in future lifetimes when we meet, and you meet this being will create problems for you. That's why some people, they find a lot of obstacles in their life because they don't have enough loving kindness and compassion towards other beings. So the second precept is not to take what is not given, what does not belong to us. We don't want to take. And we find this not only practiced in Buddhism, even in Islam and Christianity. I was told that there are certain areas in China where the Islam is very strong. If you drop something on the ground, even money, it will not be stolen. It will be either taken up and pinned on the wall or on the tree or something. And the people there, they are quite secure and safe. They sleep with their doors unlocked, with their windows unlocked. So when people have precepts, then everybody is safe and secure. So this is the second precept. Now if we take what is not given to us, then the natural result of it is that in future people will also take your things, will steal your things. That's why some people, when they employ workers and maids, their things tend to get stolen. And now the third precept is not to commit adultery, sexual misconduct. If you do that, then you're likely to be reborn as an animal. And even as an animal, you probably get castrated. It was mentioned by an Arahant Bhikkhuni when she contemplated her past life and the Therigatha verses of the Arahants. So there is three bodily precepts, and then verbal precepts, not to lie, not to carry tales to cause disharmony. For example, you hear A talking of B, you don't go and tell B, last night A said such and such a thing, and then it caused A and B to quarrel. So we promote harmony, not disharmony. The third verbal precept is not to use coarse speech, rough speech, vulgar speech and all that. Because if you use that, people get angry with you. And then even if you try to teach, people will not accept. And the fourth precept is, fourth verbal precept is not to engage in idle gossip. So these 7 precepts were taught by the Buddha so that we do not harm other living beings. So that is the first thing about Buddhist compassion. And we find in the monk's precepts that the monk has so much more precepts to keep, 227 precepts. And some of them we may think are very minor. For example, not to dig the ground that has life. Because if we dig the ground, sometimes we cut the worm, cut all types of worms and insects and white ants, etc. in the ground. So we cause suffering to them. And also, but if there's no life in the ground, a monk can dig, for example, sand, stone, clay, soil without any life. And also like cutting plants and trees, not because they have life. Actually, originally the Buddha did not make this precept, and then some of the other people who belong to other religions, they got angry with Buddhist monks for doing that because they thought that plants have life. So the Buddha made this precept not to destroy plant life. But then the Buddha also said that plant life is the abode for fairies, tree spirits. There are spirits that live in the trees. And they live in different parts of the trees. The Buddha said there are some that like to live in the leaves. There are some that like to live in the flowers. There are some that like to live in the branches. There are some that like to live on the bark of the tree. There are some that like to live in the heart of the tree, hardwood, and some like to live in the roots of the trees, and they kind of belong to different groups. So when the tree is small, it's most likely that the fairies are small. So when you destroy small trees, there's no consequence. But now and then, sometimes people cut down big trees and they suffer. As a monk, people come and tell me their problems. And sometimes I hear, they say, I got this old mango tree at the back of my house. It's already old, not bearing fruit, so we ordered it be cut. And as a result of that, sometimes they experience accidents. Sometimes they get sick. And the worst case, I was told, was this lady who cut down that old mango tree and became mentally deranged. So you can see that there are a lot of spirits around us that we don't see with the human eye. But because the Buddha could see, then the Buddha said we should be careful. It's not that you cannot cut down the tree, but if you need to cut down the old mango tree, then you should pay respect to it and tell the spirit that stays in the tree that you intend to cut it down, say 3 days or 7 days time, and give it time to go and look for another tree to go and stay. For it to move house, even if you want to move house, also you have to look for a house, suitable house to stay. So if we give them that type of respect, then they are happy, at least. Give them a bit of face, so they are also like us. So then they don't harm you. So monks' precepts, we have much more precepts in order not to harm living beings. That's why monks are supposed to be very harmless. Actually, the code of conduct for monks is very high. Of course, for some monks, they don't study the suttas and don't study the Vinaya, and they don't understand. For example, the monk is not supposed to get angry also if somebody gets angry with you, and that's pretty hard to practice. But over the years, if a monk trains in the suttas and the Vinaya, then year by year he improves. That's why the Buddha calls the spiritual path a gradual training. When a monk disrobes, the Buddha says he forsakes the training. So that is concerning precepts. Then the second one is the Buddha said that we should practice metta. Metta means to be kind in our actions, in our speech, in our thoughts, to all other beings. And to be kind to others, we also not only should be kind inside, but we should also be seen to be kind. In other words, our body language, our verbal language, people can sense, right? So, but then of course also we should use wisdom also, because if you are too kind, people climb over your head, right? So, like for example, the Buddha, he sometimes scolded these monks, those who did not practice according to the teachings, or who acted in foolish ways. The Buddha will call them foolish man, stupid man. So there's this story, sometimes we read in the Buddhist magazine about this Naga. Naga is a fierce serpent, snake spirit. So initially he used to be so fierce that he would kill human beings and all that. So one day the monk went up the hill and then he sort of taught him the Dhamma until he learned to practice the Dhamma. So he thought he wanted to practice loving kindness. So whenever people came, he did not harm all the human beings that passed by his hill. Because these Nagas, even these big snakes in the hills, they have their area. where they stay, and they don't like human beings to come intrude upon their area, because human beings come, they cut the trees, clear the land, all that. They find it very difficult to find food. So when human beings came near him, he stopped killing them, fighting very fiercely. So the village boys came and found that he was changed. So they started to tease him, and they were surprised also he didn't kill them or belch out his smoke and all this. So they went nearer, and he still did not react. And they started to take stones and throw at him, and he did not react. They went to take sticks and beat him until he became bloody. Then he went to complain to the old monk. See, you asked me to act like this. Yeah, act like this. See the consequence. And the old monk told him, I told you not to kill living beings. I did not say you cannot belch your smoke. But sometimes people too much. Sometimes we have to show our anger. Because later I mentioned, Buddha says sometimes we use the soft way, it doesn't work. We need to use the hard way. So that is metta, but to be tinged with wisdom. Third one is charity or dana, generosity. Helping others, basically, giving what other people need. Most of the time it's probably material things like food, money and all that, but not only this. But sometimes some people need kind words when they are suffering. You need to console them, so we speak some kind words to them. Sometimes some friend is sick, then we need to visit them to show our sympathy. Sometimes somebody has a loss, for example, the son or the daughter passed away, then we need to go and see them, console them, or take them out to forget, etc. And of giving, the highest gift, the Buddha says, is the giving of the Dhamma, because the Dhamma benefits us the most. Basically, every living being, the Buddha says, needs food to survive. This may sound strange to us. Even devas also, heavenly beings, also they need food. Even hell beings also need food. All beings, ghosts, all beings need food to survive. So, if somebody comes to you and he needs food, so you give that person food. But then tomorrow he's hungry again, he comes to you again, and you have to give him food again. And the day after, he comes to you, and you keep giving him food. Of course, if you can do it for the rest of your life, it's okay. But it's a bit bothersome, isn't it? So it's easier if you teach him a skill, how to use his hands to cari makan, earn a living. Right? So you teach him a skill, he is able to go and work and survive on his own. Then his life is easier for you, isn't it? But even if he has a skill to find a livelihood, that only helps him for this life. And if he does not realize that he is poor because of his karma, then he's walking the same path. And after he passes away, he'll again be suffering, right? But if we teach him the Dhamma, then the Dhamma is very practical. Teaches how to not only to find happiness in the next life, it also teaches how to find happiness here and now. That we have to work. Whatever we want, we have to work for it. Not go and buy Ampat Eko or pray to Dato Kong and all that. So if you teach him the Dhamma, he learns how to survive now and also to create merit so that in the future lifetimes he can also get what he needs. So that's why the Dhamma is the highest blessing, is the highest offering. And the Dhamma can help us to reduce our suffering and to eventually eliminate all suffering. So that's why the Dhamma is the highest gift. Now the fourth one is amongst lifestyle. You know, the Buddha, before he was enlightened, he used to go to the forest and practice meditation and strive in the spiritual path, get out of samsara. And after the Buddha was enlightened, he still lived his life in the forest. He didn't come out to the big cities to be famous. He lived in the forest, although he did go here and there to preach the Dhamma. And in one of the suttas, the Buddha said, there are two reasons why he continues to live in the forest. One is he has a happy abiding, nobody to disturb his peace. He can do what he likes, meditate when he wants to meditate. You see, even when he wants to answer a call of nature, also nobody to stop him. He can do it easily. So the first one is a happy abiding. Second one, the Buddha says, out of compassion for future generations. This a lot of people don't understand. Why? Out of compassion for future generations, the Buddha lived in the forest. The Buddha is trying to show us that the way out of samsara is to practice the holy life in the forest, to give up worldly things, because worldly things, even though they give us much happiness and enjoyment in this life, but eventually, if you attach to it, it gives you suffering in the end. It's what the Chinese say, Tao Ti Boi Ko, right? The beginning is sweet, the end is bitter. So a lot of people are like that. Worldly people, they want happiness here and now, but in the end, they reap suffering. So the Buddha is showing us the way out of samsara, and he is trying to tell us that the way out of samsara is to give up worldly things, retreat from the world. I wish a lot of monks now don't practice. During the Buddha's time, there were no town monasteries. All the monasteries were in the forest. Also, the monk's lifestyle, you find that the monk goes on arms round. The monks, even the robes he wears are different from lay people. Shaves his head bald so that he doesn't need to look handsome or pretty. It's a very simple lifestyle. And giving up worldly pleasures, etc. This is showing the way to actually out of suffering and to attain happiness. The monk's lifestyle is Tao Ko Boi Ti. Beginning is suffering, bitter. In the end, it's sweet. When I first became a monk, there was a lot of suffering for me. I had a reasonably good lifestyle, and before I became a monk. And after I became a monk, I went to a very strict monastery in America, where you take one vegetarian meal a day. You have to work the whole day. And in the morning when we start working at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's on an empty stomach. No coffee to drink, no tea to drink, nothing, no bread to eat, just water to drink, and then we have to start working. And the work was pretty heavy, and sometimes I had to carry Buddha images from Taiwan. I had to plant apple trees, plant the big bamboo. And my weight went down from 120 to 96. And monks there were very unfriendly. American people like Ajahn Sumedho mentioned, maybe not in the talk, when we talk to him in the room, say Americans are very direct. Tell you in the face, you do something wrong. And I got scolding every day. And I told him, one of the monks even scolded me 4-letter word. American monk. So blunt. So it was a lot of mental torture for me. So much so that I broke down and cried one day. The first 1 year was a lot of suffering. I eventually got used to it. So that is a monk's life, beginning, not suffering, but slowly you get used to it. When I came back from America, I went to Thailand. Then we go on arms around, beg for our food, and the food is not very good. And at one time I was staying with a group of Teochew monks. Teochew monks like to drink very thick Chinese tea. Every day at 4 p.m. They will make that tea with a small kettle, they stuff it full of tea leaves. Don't drink with them, it's not so nice. So every day they call me to drink with them. But I was not born a Teochew, so I didn't have a Teochew stomach. After a while I got gastric. When I came back to Malaysia, this gastric also was bothering me, I was staying in the cave also. Then I tried to take cheese because in Thai tradition it's allowed. But I found cheese didn't suit me. It's too oily, too salty. So there was a time when there's a lot of dukkha. Eventually you get over it, as the Buddha said in the sutras. So now, year by year, you get more used to it. It's becoming sweeter and sweeter. This Pacheka Buddhas, a lot of people don't know that Buddhas, 99.9% of Buddhas are Pacheka Buddhas. 99.9% of Buddhas refuse to teach. Because if you try to teach, sometimes people don't understand, people don't accept the teaching, sometimes people talk bad about you. And Jesus Christ got crucified because he was trying to teach a new religion. Because his standard was higher than the previous teachings. The previous teachings was an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. He said, no. So somebody slaps you, you offer him the other cheek to slap. So it was a sort of a revolution he was trying to create, but people could not accept him and crucified him on the cross. That's why 99.9% of Buddhas refuse to teach. But are they selfish? Are they not compassionate? Even though they don't teach, they are still compassionate. They show the way out of samsara. They still come on arms round to give the chance for people to get married and also show other people the way out of samsara. So a monk's lifestyle is compassionate. Sometimes some books say that the most compassionate being is the bodhisattva. Cannot be, because the bodhisattva still has a self. Bodhisattva is not totally enlightened, but an arahant is totally enlightened. An arahant includes the Buddha. The word arahant comes from the word arahatta. Ara and hatta. Ara is the spokes of the wheel of samsara. Hatta is broken. So an arahatta or arahant is one who has broken the cycle of rebirth. So will never be reborn. And there are 3 types of arahants. One is a Sammasambuddha, another one is a Pacheka Buddha, the third one is a arahant disciple. Buddhas are actually self-enlightened arahants. Buddhas are actually Arya from the past life. And then when they get reborn in their last life, there's no more teaching in the world. Like our Buddha, he was probably a Sakadagamin. So he struggled very hard because there was no more Dhamma in the world until he became enlightened. So that is a Buddha, self-enlightened arahant. So the most compassionate beings are arahants because they have no more self. When they have no more self, there's no selfishness at all. They see all beings as the same as them. How can they not be compassionate?